All right, so picture this. You're about to finally buy that thing you've been wanting. You open up your web browser, add to cart, and bam, delays, out-of-stock messages everywhere. And it's not just online, your local grocery store, running low on all your favorite imported treats. And that was almost the reality with this East Coast port strike.
Yeah, it's crazy. What's really wild about this is that it wasn't just like, oh no, a few minor inconveniences here and there. This thing had the potential to, like, totally rock the entire U.S. economy.
You're listening to The Deep Dive, and we're breaking down the recent East Coast port strike. And look, this is way more than just like what you saw on the news, right? We're going to really dig into like why those massive cargo ships almost stopped moving entirely, what could have happened if things went really south, and the deal that actually, saved the day and kept America's supply chain, well, in one piece.
Yeah, we're talking a serious behind-the-scenes look at this standoff.
Yeah.
Like, on one side, you have the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA. They represent those essential dock workers. And on the other, the U.S. Maritime Alliance, or USMX, representing the shipping companies, big players.
Exactly. And before we even get into the deal itself, I think it's important to understand, why was the ILA like ready to bring everything to a halt? I mean, nobody wants to imagine empty shelves at the store. So what were these workers really fighting for?
At the heart of it, the ILA was saying, hey, the shipping industry is booming, but we're not seeing those profits. They wanted better wages, and when you think about it, these dock workers, their schedules are brutal. It's not your average 9 to 5, not even close.
Yeah, absolutely. One article I was reading, I think it was the ILA actually emphasized this. They said their members don't work typical 9 to 5 jobs. They work extraordinary hours, sacrificing time with their families, and they're essential to, keeping the entire country running. So no wonder tensions were high. But how did it actually escalate to a strike? Was it just like months of negotiations at a standstill?
You're on the right track. These things definitely don't pop up overnight.
Right.
They were going back and forth for months. But it seems like, a real breakdown in communication is what really threw gasoline on the fire. Neither side felt heard, things escalated, and eventually the ILA felt like walking off the job was the only way to make a statement.
And that's where things could gotten like really interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
We've all heard the whispers about supply chain issues the past couple years, but this had the potential to be a whole other beast.
Oh, yeah, this wasn't just, waiting an extra couple days for your new phone case. We're talking like potentially empty shelves at the grocery store, businesses, like not able to get the stuff they need to operate. I even think like factories having to slow down because they can't get parts.
I bet someone like ran the numbers on this whole economic doomsday scenario.
Oh, you know it. The Anderson Economic Group, they estimated a loss of, get this, $2.1 billion. Every single week, every week the strike went on. And that's just, scratching the surface.
Okay, so say the strike dragged on. What would that look like for me and you? Like, aside from missing our Amazon deliveries?
We'll say goodbye to chocolate. I'm serious. A lot of cocoa beans. Those come through those ports. Seafood. Forget about affordable salmon. And if you thought getting a new car was tough before, try finding parts.
Okay, now that hits a little too close to home. But seriously, this whole thing must put a ton of pressure on the Biden administration. You've got a president who's supposed to be, pro-labor, but also facing down a potential economic crisis.
Talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, his base, his supporters, they were looking for him to back the dock workers. But on the other, you've got experts saying this strike could be devastating if it goes on too long.
And let's not forget the 2024 election right around the corner. That had to add another layer to all of this.
For sure, for sure. Some people were even pushing for Biden to pull out, like the big guns, talking about invoking the Taft-Hartley Act.
Yeah. Now, some of us might not remember Taft-Hartley from, high school civics class. What would that have actually meant?
Right, so Taft-Hartley, it's a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah.
That's the president basically force workers back to their jobs if a strike is considered like a real danger to the country.
So yeah, kind of a big deal. Not exactly something you'd expect from like a president who's all about supporting unions.
You got it. For Biden, using Taft-Hartley, that would have been risky. Politically, strategically, the whole 9 yards. It could have alienated his base, caused problems with labor unions in general, and who knows if it would have even ended the strike quickly.
So did he do it? Did Biden end up using Taft-Hartley?
Nope. He held strong. He basically doubled down on this idea of, collective bargaining workers through their unions, having the right to negotiate with employers. He told both sides, get back to the table and figure this out. And eventually, well, they did.
Thank goodness for that, right? What did the ILA manage to get in this deal?
So they haven't released everything publicly, but early reports suggested a pretty big win for the ILA. We're talking a 62% raise over 6 years.
62%. Whoa. That's not like keeping up with the cost of groceries. That feels like a statement.
It really is, and I think it shows how much pressure they were able to put on, and how effective their strategy was.
But this deal, even though it was great for the ILA, it didn't answer all the questions,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to automation.
Yeah, because you can't talk about, the future of work without talking about automation.
Mhm.
And this wasn't just about like getting a raise today. It was about making sure they still had jobs in the future, right?
Yeah.
What was the ILA so worried about with like robots on the docks?
I mean, that's the question right now, isn't it? In so many industries, robots, self-driving cars, all that, companies are like always looking to save money. And a lot of times that means replacing people with machines.
Yeah, of course. From a business perspective, it makes sense. But if you're the one potentially losing your job, it's a different story.
Totally. And the ILA, they're not dumb. They know this is already happening. And they've been really clear about how they feel about it. Didn't they actually use the term non-negotiable when it came to protecting jobs?
Oh, yeah. They said, like, we're happy to talk about wages and all that, but when it comes to keeping our jobs, that is non-negotiable. End of story.
Wow. So did they get those protections then
Yeah.
in the deal?
That's the big question. The agreement itself was, kind of vague on that point. They said they'd return to the bargaining table to negotiate all other outstanding issues, which basically means that fight's not over.
Huh. So a win for now, but round two coming eventually.
Exactly. And you know what I think is really interesting about this whole thing? This port strike? It's like a perfect example of this huge issue everywhere. How do we, as a society, balance all this new technology with making sure people still have jobs and can, like, support themselves?
It's a tough one. No easy answers. But what this whole deep dive has really shown me is that, these aren't just like numbers on a spreadsheet we're talking about. Real people, like these dock workers, their lives are directly affected by all this. So yeah, maybe next time you're like having your morning coffee or opening up a package, take a second and think about the people who made it happen and what the future holds for all of us with, automation and everything changing so fast.